10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 382. Hey, everybody, welcome back to episode 382 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Hope you're all doing well out there. New month, that means new series. We're going to take a step back from the diminished stuff for a little while. I feel like we did almost too many episodes about that, and we will definitely come back to it. But I want to sort of take a break and move into another important topic that a lot of people have been asking me about, and this is how to use the Lydian sound. So we're going to do a couple episodes on this, exploring it. It's actually pretty simple if somebody explains it to you in the right way. And my goal for all of you after this series is to be able to go out and actually use some of that Lydian material in your solos. But before we jump in, just wanted to remind you this is a listener-supported podcast, which means that it's listeners just like you that keep the podcast coming out. We don't do any advertisements or anything like that. So it's all about you. And in return for supporting the show with a small monthly donation, you do get a PDF and audio examples for every single episode. So it's a pretty good trade-off. If you enjoy this, you also get more out of it, and you make sure that it keeps coming out every single week. So we use the Patreon platform, and you can go and see all the details, what you'll get, the donation amounts, all that stuff by going to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, or simply going to patreon.com and searching for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. And as soon as you sign up to support us, you get instant access to everything that we've ever done. So pretty good deal over there. Quick shout out to some new patrons. Thank you to our new $5 patron, Rory, and thank you to our new $3 patron, Chad. And of course, to the over 350 people that are over there supporting us, thank you. We definitely couldn't do this show without you. So again, patreon.com, search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast and get yourself signed up to join the family today. All right, so let's dive into the Lydian sound. Now, this concept, just like a lot of concepts in jazz, if it's never been explained to you the right way, it can be a really intimidating thing to actually get started on and ultimately be able to use in your solos. But my goal here is to explain it in a really simple way, or at least as simple as we can, and give you two chord qualities that you can start using this over. Today, we'll start with the first chord quality, and then next week, we'll talk about the second chord quality. So today, we're going to talk about using it over a major seventh chord. And the sound really is fair game over any major seventh chord that you come across. Of course, it's going to work a little bit better in some situations than others, but that's just like anything in jazz. You've got to kind of experiment and see where these particular sounds that we learn about are used in the best way. And the only way to do that is through trial and error. You know, there is some understanding of theory that sort of needs to happen that goes along with this. But mostly it's just going to be like trying it and using your ears to tell you, hey, that worked, or that didn't work so well. So definitely remember that with all this information that I'm giving all of you, remember your ears are still going to be the thing that should tell you where to use this. And experimentation should be a very, very regular part of your routine. Because without experimenting, you just aren't going to know what situations you want to use this in and what situations maybe you shouldn't use it in. Okay. So let's dive into the theory real quick, and then we'll figure out how we can use this. And then we'll do some experimentation of our own with this sound. Okay, so we are looking at the PDF from this week. And the first thing we want to understand is a C major scale. So let's just play that real quick. Okay. Now, we're not actually going to be using that C major scale from C, but in order to understand Lydian, we have to understand what a Lydian mode is. And this is actually very simple. All you do is you take the same key signature we just played, which is the key of C, no sharps, no flats, but instead of playing it from C to C, so it gives us that do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do sound, what we want to do is we want to go up to the fourth note of the scale, which is F, and we want to play F to F, but we want to use the same key signature. So still no sharps, no flats. Now, if you go through the names of the modes of a major scale, you get Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian. There it is. That's our fourth mode. So now it makes sense. We're playing F to F in the key of C because that is the Lydian mode of a C major scale. And typically, the chord symbol that you will see that you would want to use the sound over would be an F major 7 sharp 11 chord. And we see that a lot in jazz. We see these major 7 sharp 11 chords. Check out what it sounds like. It sounds really great. So doesn't that sound nice? And the other thing is that we don't necessarily need to see that sharp 11 extension written in the chord symbol. Even if we just had a regular F major 7 chord in a lot of situations. Now there is that caveat. This won't work over every single time that you see a major 7 chord, but in a lot of situations, it'll sound just fine. So here's a little voicing that's just pure F major 7. Still sounds pretty good, doesn't it? So this is going to be our chord quality for this first episode, is that we want to sort of talk about how we're going to use this over a major 7 sharp 11 chord or just a plain old major 7 chord. Now, the second thing on your PDF that you're going to find is some useful structures that you can pull out of this scale and actually play over a major 7 sharp 11 chord or a major 7 chord. So we're doing this all with an F major 7 as our sort of base of operations here. So all these useful structures that you see that are written on this next line are all going to be over that F major 7 chord. Okay. So the first structure that is really, really handy is to, when you see a major 7 chord, you play a triad, a major triad, a step up from the root. So over F major 7, that's going to be a G major triad. Doesn't that sound nice? That's a really, really useful structure over this. Okay, let's move on to the second one. So the second one is going to be a B diminished triad over an F major 7 chord. So that would mean we would go up to that sharp 11, that note that's being altered by using the Lydian mode. And we're going to highlight that again by playing, it's going to be sharp 11, 13, and the root. And that's a really nice sound. Now, this is not on your sheet, but you notice if you combine that triad, that major triad based off of the second and the diminished triad based off of that sharp 11, what you actually get is you get G7, a G7 shape. That's another really super useful thing to think about when you want to start using Lydian. You could either think about a triad based off of the second. You could think about a diminished triad based off of the sharp 11, or you could think about a seventh chord outlining a dominant seventh chord based off of, again, the second. So that's a really, really useful thing to have in your bag of tricks. All right. And then the other one is going to be a minor triad based off of the seventh. So over an F major 7, that is a minor triad based off of the E. Again, it's got a lot of the same notes, right? But one difference being the E on the bottom. Whereas G has the D on the bottom. Now we have E on the bottom. And I love this sound. Okay, so now you can start to think about not only just using the full Lydian mode, but if that's a little bit too much for you to think about, now you've basically got 4 structures that you could think about. G major triad, a B diminished triad, the shape of a G7 chord, or you could think about that E minor triad shape. And those will be all really good places to start that are a little bit less intimidating than just like trying to use the entire scale. Okay. So, what I'm going to do at the end here is I am going to just over a backing track that is concert F major 7 sharp 11. I'm just going to experiment with some of these things so that you could sort of hear them in action with a rhythm section. And that's just going to be the one chord going over and over and over again. And I'll do that for about a minute or so. And then I want you to start experimenting with some of these sounds. Okay. And then if you get to the point where you feel pretty comfortable with them, you could try putting them over tunes where you see a major 7th chord or a major 7 sharp 11 chord. And you can start to actually use this stuff in pretty short order. But obviously, it takes some practice. First, I want you to get this stuff under your fingers, into your ears, and then start using it. Obviously, that's the goal of everything we do here. All right. So I'm going to do some of that playing at the end here. Remember, if you want to get the PDF, I will also, for the $5 patrons, throw the backing track in there for you so that you can practice over it. Sign up to support the show. And we do that on Patreon. So go to patreon.com, search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, get yourself signed up, and you get access to all this stuff. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. I will see you all next week with another episode. Hope you have a great weekend and you are doing well. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye.